Hello and welcome to another edition of Inside Guns with your host, me, the Yankee Marshal. Now today's video is going to be a little bit of a touchy subject. I'm going to piss a lot of people off, probably going to lose some subs. It's going to be there's probably going to be some people crying by the end, probably me after I read the comment section. But the only thing I'm going to ask from people, I'm going to say, that's okay. You can say mean things to me. You can disagree with me, but watch the video entirely first, or at least this segment of the video before you start commenting, because so many people make comments before they watch the video, and it just makes them look stupid. And if I'm going to have people call me names, I want to be them calling me names in an informed way. If you're going to be abusive, be informed and abusive. That being said, what I want to talk about today is the upcoming Civil War. You know, January 6th, they're going to be certifying the election results, and supposedly there's going to be mass protests, and we're going to be engaged in an open revolt at that time. And people have asked me, like, what are you going to do? And blah, blah, blah. Well, I want to take some time today, even though this is a very touchy subject, to address this, because I've gotten several questions from viewers every night pretty much lately on live chats like, oh, what's going to happen? Is it going to be a revolt? What are you going to do? And I want to answer those questions, and I also want to answer another aspect of it. One question I've been getting from a lot of people who are, not particularly Donald Trump supporters, and they're like, why are so many people willing to let Donald Trump be a dictator? Why are they willing to let him overturn an election? Why are they willing to participate in that? Well, first I want to deal with the first questions first, and then we'll get a little bit more into that, because I don't think it is what a lot of people think it is. I think a lot of people have a misconception here. First off, I want to address the actual Civil War itself, the revolution. Do I think that's going to happen January 6th? No, it's not going to happen at all January 6th. No. If it does happen, it's going to happen over time. It's not going to happen suddenly on January 6th. So for people who think that that's when the shots are going to start being fired, there might be some shots fired that day, but it isn't going to be a mass revolution. There will be protests. There will be people who object, just like there were people who objected to Trump being the president when he was first sworn in. Remember that Million Moms March or whatever it was? They were out there like, we're anti-Trump and we're marching because we don't want him to be president. Well, that stuff happens. Now, will the protest this time be as big as that protest or as big as the BLM protests and stuff we've been seeing lately? No, I think there'll be a drop in the bucket compared to what we've gotten used to in 2020. But there will be people out there expressing their unhappiness with what's going on. And there will be some people that, like, we think the election was stolen out there also. But as far as will it happen, no, there won't be a revolution. There will be protests. There might be violence, but will it be anything great? Some massive amount of stuff? No, I don't think so. And people ask me, why do you think there won't be? Because I tell them in my chats, I don't think there will be. And I think it is because most people respect the Constitution. No matter how upset they are that Trump lost or that Biden won, whichever one it is that upsets them the most. I'm one of those people like, I don't really care about Trump and I really don't care about Biden. I don't like either one of them. I hate that that's what our country's come to, Biden or Trump. But I think most people respect the process and respect the Constitution. And I think most people are rational and they're like, well, the election was litigated in court. It's been recounted multiple times in these states. And, Hillary Clinton got more votes than him last time, too. So it's not surprising, since she was the worst candidate ever, that Biden got more votes than Hillary Clinton did. So most people are just like, I don't like it, but I support the Constitution. I'm a constitutionalist. And until someone can give me proof that something shady happened, that our democracy was undermined, I'm not going to be a bitch about it, for lack of better words, because that's the way I feel. I believe strongly in our Constitution, the documents that govern our nation, the ones that secure our freedoms, the ones that protect our freedoms. I support that document fully, 100%. Not just the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, but all of it. And you can't do that if you're willing to overturn it just because you didn't like the result of an election. You'd have to have a lot of proof. Someone's going to bring me a lot of proof before I'm willing to say, oh, yeah, that's it. The Constitution's no longer in play because they're not abiding by blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to do it off hearsay, not going to do it off what I feel, not going to do it off anything like that. I'm going to honor the Constitution above all else. And right now, I have seen no evidence that would make me go to a civil war over Trump. I'm not even that particularly fond of Trump. I like some of the things he did as president, hate some of the things he did as president. Like some of the things he said, really hated some of the things he said and the way he behaved. So I'm not heartbroken that it's not Trump as president, no more so than I'm thrilled that it's Biden. So I'm not going to be revolting on January 6th over this issue. Now let's move on to the topic of why are so many people willing to revolt and over Trump and allow him to overthrow an election? Well, there's multiple answers to that. Some people don't believe he is overthrowing a just election. Some people believe the election wasn't fair. They believe it was fraudulent. They believe a lot of things happened. Now, I'm not saying there's any evidence for any of that, but people can feel any way they want, think anything they want. And a lot of people feel that way. It's not so much that they're turning on the Constitution, it's just that they really think it wasn't served here. They've been sold a bill of goods that I don't believe because, like I said, this election has been litigated more than any other election, recounted more than any other election, and more importantly, involved more paper ballots than ever. So the people who complain about the Dominion machines, I'm 100% on your side for that. They should never be used. No electronic voting should be used. It should all be paper ballots. Those are harder to alter. And the very fact, I agree with the directors of national intelligence, the director of Homeland Security, all those people that say this was probably the most secure election we've ever had because of the number of paper ballots and the amount of attention that was paid to it. So I don't believe that, but I'm saying some people do. So those people aren't really turning on the Constitution. They're just really believe something. Like I said, I think they've been sold a false bill of goods, or at least they're willing to believe something with no evidence. I'm not willing to believe something with no evidence, except for Bigfoot. And I like to think there's lots of evidence for that. But that being said, there are some people that are willing to do it because they really don't support the Constitution. And those are usually the people that call themselves patriots. I've noticed in my lifetime, and my grandfather always said, people who tend to wrap themselves in the flag are the people that least know what it means or what it stands for. And I agree with that. That's usually the case with a lot of things. It seems like people that are the most opposed to things are usually the people that are most ignorant of what they're opposed to. Because the world's not black and white, and they see the world as black and white, and they usually are missing a lot of the details. But there are some people that do not value the Constitution, that call themselves patriots. And a lot of these are politicians. If you ever see a politician call themselves a patriot, just giggle, because that ain't really true. I don't really think there's very many patriots that are politicians, because most patriots would not be able to stomach a single term as a politician, the way things are. And the same thing in like the gun community, etc. The people who wrap themselves in the flag the much and scream I'm for the Constitution, I'm an American, and I'm a patriot. They're the ones that aren't really patriots. They're not really loyal to the Constitution. They're loyal to an ideology. They're loyal to what they think America should be, and the things they think America should do, and the people they think that should be in charge. That's not being faithful to our democracy. That's not being faithful to our Constitution. That's being faithful to an ideology. That doesn't make you a patriot. In fact, it can make you a traitor really quick if you're not careful. So there are those people, but I think they are the minority. I think the majority of people are just either been sold a bill of goods that they believe something without proof because they want to believe it, and they really think they're fighting for the Constitution. But I don't even think those are the majority of people. I think it's a misnomer. I think it's a false assumption here that people are doing this to support Trump. Now, there are some cult members out there. Trust me, I run into them every day, the Trump cultists, and they're more sad than anything else. But I think a lot of people that are willing to be involved in this and that are calling for revolution and they're calling for civil war, it doesn't got anything to do with Donald Trump. It's got to do with decades after decade after decade of watching rights be gradually eroded, a little bit at a time, and coming to the conclusion that politicians are not on our side, not on either side, really. So what do we have to lose by turning the whole thing over, just flipping it up on its end and starting over? I think there's more people that feel that way than there are that really want to overturn the election because they just want Trump to be the winner again. And they don't care about the Constitution. We want Trump. I don't think that's the majority. I think a lot of people are using that because to foster their idea that this should have happened a long time ago because we've been watching our rights erode for so long. And that's an argument I can't really argue with them as much about. Like if it's just, we think the election was fixed and we want to overturn it. I'm like, the election's been litigated. I don't see any proof, definitely not enough proof that I would go against the Constitution. But if they say, well, this has been a long time coming because our rights have been constantly being eroded and it isn't going to get any better, it's just going to get worse, that's an argument I have a little harder time fighting with. I'm like, I can see your point. So there are different mindsets here. There's not just everyone's like, I'm a Trumpy and I want Trump again and blah, 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 like a lot of people think. That's, like I said, I think that is a huge misconception. Another thing that I think is going on too is that we have so many people that are willing to entertain the notion of civil war and rebellion because they're not being served. We have so many people, black, white, rich, black, white, Italian, whatever. If you're not rich, you're not being served by these politicians. They like to serve corporations. That's the only people they care for is corporations. That's why they want corporations treated as people, because that's the only thing, that way they can say they care about the people. But they don't care about you or me or anybody else, especially not minorities. There's just a whole, I would say 80% of the people in this country aren't being served by the politicians, period. At least not in any direct way. And that breeds a lot of anger. A lot of people have been disenfranchised in this country, and it's more and more so every year because the middle class isn't growing. They aren't prospering. You might see mild upticks in median income for the middle class, but they don't tell you that's because so many people at the bottom level fell off the middle class, and they ain't making middle class money anymore. And the people at the very top of the middle class ones are almost making enough to move into the upper class now because they're the haves and they're getting a little more now. But otherwise, the middle class is disappearing and a lot of people are being underserved. And there's one other aspect of that I think a lot of people don't talk about, and I think they don't talk about it for a good reason because they don't want to be called racist. And that's another thing I think a lot of people, Never Enough Ammo, point out tonight, that there's a lot of people on the right that are just sick of being called a racist every time they disagree with people on the left. So they're like, fuck the whole government, tear it down. But this is another aspect of that I'm talking about here. And like I said, I'm not saying this in a racist way at all. I'm just saying this in a matter-of-fact way that this is one of the problems we're dealing with. And if we don't address this problem, it's not going to get any better. But if you're a poor white kid in West Virginia living in a trailer park and your parents were poor and your grandparents were poor and your great-grandparents were poor and they were held down by the man. Remember, it's not just the left that holds minorities down so that they'll always be, the tortured minorities so that they'll vote for the Democrats so that they can manipulate them. The right holds down the lower class whites too. They demonize education. It's a bad thing if you go get an education, you liberal. How long did they throw that down people's throats? They want to keep the white people poor, dumb, and voting however they tell them to. They want to keep them angry and easily manipulated. And they've been doing that for decades now also. And it gets to a point where there's so many poor people. And like I say, if you're a poor kid in West Virginia who's been held down for generations also by the institutions, and you're poor, you don't really care if your great-great-great-grandparents were free or not. All you know is that you're poor, you're not being served, your parents weren't served, your grandparents weren't served. I mean, I understand that racism has an effect on people's culture and minorities as a whole, black people as a whole today. But if you're a poor black kid in Detroit or a poor white kid in West Virginia or vice versa, you really don't care what happened to your great-great-great-grandpa. You care what happens to you and your parents and that you're not being served and you're angry because of it. And that's just the reality. Slavery can only be used as a tool or as an excuse for so long, because eventually, if you go back far enough, every race has been enslaved at one time or another. It's just that it happened to black people more recently, so they're still suffering a lot of the ramifications from it, a lot more so than you or me. People always talk about white privilege is not a thing. White privilege is definitely a thing, because I'll be the first person to tell you, being white's fucking awesome. There are many times in my life that I might not have been on the up and up, but I got the benefit of the doubt from police officers and others because I was white. So white does have some privilege, even if you don't have money. But like I was saying, get back on my topic here. If you're a poor black kid in Milwaukee or a poor white kid in Ohio, whatever, you're both angry. But let's say you're the poor white kid. You're the poor black kid, and you're seeing always in the news and always you're seeing politicians go, we need to do something for these poor black youths. We need to have a black college fund. We need to have a program that gets black people jobs. We need to have a program that gets black people this and gives black people an advantage here, or tries to make up for the disadvantages they've had for years. It's like I hear people all the time say, well, why is it that every couple on TV now has to be interracial? And they're like, well, because of many, many years of it not being allowed to be shown, we're skewing the other way now just to try to make up for it. I'm like, well, I don't like skewing too far one way to make up for a bad. I like to make up for a bad by actually being good now. And being good would be portraying a normal representation of our population, not trying to portray it as it's something that it isn't. But once again, I'm getting off topic here. So like I say, if you're the poor white kid, if you're the black kid and you keep seeing one side say, we're going to do all this for minorities, we're going to do that for minorities, we're going to do this for minorities, you're like, I'm voting for them because, they're going to do stuff for me. But if you're the white kid and you're like, I'm just as poor as they are, what are they going to do for me? Are they going to provide me a college fund? Are they going to have a special program to get poor white kids into more programs to be industrial leaders? Or do they just assume that white people always have a leg up anyway? No, white people that are wealthy or exceptionally attractive have a leg up. But just being some poor, let's say poor, ugly white kid from West Virginia, you've got nobody helping you. You've got no advantage anywhere. And when you see another group of people, even if they're not receiving the treatment they're being promised, they're not getting the stuff they're promised, but you see them being catered to, you're like, why am I not important? Why am I not getting any of this? And you get angry. And you're like, well, then fuck this whole thing. I don't care about any of it. Burn it all down. It's not serving me. And there's so many people that are like that. So you've got a combination of people that actually do think the election was stolen. That's a tiny little minority. I can't believe most people that are rational actually think that the Republicans screwed themselves out of elections, especially when there was a lot of paper ballots. Pretty much every one of the arguments for the election being fraudulent has been disputed and proven wrong and thrown out everywhere. They just don't hold water. So like I said, I'm going to need better proof than that. But if you're one of these people that's against the institution right now and considering revolution, it's because of a lot of things. Like I said, tiny little percentage think that Trump was cheated. And then there's a bigger bunch of people that are like, we've been being cheated for decades, and this is as good a match to start the fire as any. We don't really like the match so much, but we think the fire needs to be started. And that's an even bigger portion. And then you have an even bigger portion of people that just aren't served anymore. They aren't taken care of. And then there's a big portion of them that are like angry because they're in the same dire situation as these people, but these people seem to be getting catered to. And people go like, you say these people like they're... No, that's just a different category of people. There's no united Caucasian college fund. And that might not mean much. You might be able to say, well, that's only because they have less and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's true. But to that poor white kid in West Virginia, he sees that as he's being left out of something. And since he's not being served by anything else, he says, well, at least they have that. I have nothing. And that's where you get all this anger. And a lot of people are just angry, disenfranchised, and don't want to take it anymore. So to answer both questions, is there going to be a revolt on January 6th? No. I don't believe there will be because, like I said, I think most people, whether they like it or not, they're going to accept the limits of the Constitution on what limits it places on elections, and they're going to go, better luck to us next time. In 4 years, we'll see what happens and move on. And the people that are wanting to revolt and are wanting to rebel, I don't think it's because they just love Trump so much. Like I said, there are some of those people, and those are the type of people that are going to fall into one cult or another. So, what are we going to do about them? If it's not this, they'd be Moonies or something. I don't know. But I think they're a small part. I think a lot of it is just people that are tired of it, are, sick of being disenfranchised, sick of watching other people get special interests, get more attention than they get, even when there's more of them. And people that are just sick of watching our rights be eroded. So it's not a question of how many people are willing to overturn the Constitution for Trump. It's people who think the Constitution's already been overturned through one way or another, faulty election, or just having our rights eroded, or it just doesn't serve them anymore. So those are the answers to those questions. And like I said, I know I was going to piss some of you off with my opinions on this. So now that you've listened to all of this part of the video, go ahead, leave your nasty comments. All right, I'm running long today, so I want to go ahead and move on now to our viewer EDC of the day, because our first topic was really two topics and I wasted a lot of time on it. I've been trying to get these chats down to 15 minutes. That ain't working so far. But today I want to move on to our viewer EDC, and today we have Jim F. And as you can see, Jim F is carrying his P320RX, which he does have a O-Light attached to. Gee, I hope he got a discount code from Mr. Guns and Gear before he bought that O-Light. And he's carrying it inside waistband at the appendix position. Now, first off, before I talk about how Jim is carrying, I want to say P320, awesome freaking gun, especially the RXs. I had one of those. They're awesome. I wish they'd made them in a 40 at that time. I would still have it, but it was 9mm. But awesome gun. I even like the O-Lights. I just don't like the people who market them and the way they market them. So awesome setup as far as what you're carrying. Now let's talk about how you're carrying. Now, a lot of people are going to be surprised that I even showed this, because I do not like inside waistband appendix carry. I think it is one of the most dangerous ways. I would say it is the most dangerous way you could actually carry a firearm. In fact, there's tons of examples of people injuring themselves severely or fatally because they carried this way. But that aside, I want to say I was not going to show this picture. I was going to say I'm not going to promote this. But then I started noticing a couple clues here. Well, for one, Jim F sent his picture here, but I noticed that the email is from a Jenny F. So that made me start thinking, Jenny F, Jim F, And then I noticed one detail in the picture that put it all crystal clear for me. And I noticed that Jim is wearing a wallet chain. And we all know what that means. That's right. Jim is obviously a lesbian. I've never known anyone else to carry a wallet chain. In fact, I bet he's wearing Birkenstocks or Crocs right now. And I bet that there's scratch marks on the inside of his door frame on his Subaru where his wallet chain scrapes when he gets in. So it turns out I'm thinking Jim here is probably actually, like I said, a lesbian. And therefore, there's no chance he's going to shoot his dick off by carrying appendix carry. Now, there is a good chance if it goes off, you'll still give yourself some really bad chapped lips there, Jim. And you do still have a femoral artery. So I'm not going to say it's a safe way to carry. But since I am a man, I don't know what it's like to carry as a woman. So I'm going to give you a pass on the appendix carry inside waistband, Jim. But keep in mind, everyone else out there, inside waistband appendix carry is probably the least safe way you could possibly carry. And don't give me that. It takes me 1/8 of a second when I draw. Well, show me some examples in real world of where that's helped. I'll show examples of where people have died because of them carrying inside waistband, and we'll see whose stack of examples gets higher. But with that aside, just wanted to show our concealed carrier of the day, our viewer EDC. It's Jim F with his P320 inside waistband at the appendix position. All right, everybody, that's our show for today. Thank you for coming. I do appreciate it. I hope you come back again tomorrow. And like I said, let those nasty comments roll. That's one of the points of me not answering to anybody but my viewers, is that I can say what I want on here. And I take the responsibility for the things I say. So if you disagree with me, let me know. In fact, you can always come on my show if you disagree with me. We always do the slap the yank. So all you got to do is send an email to shootingleftofcenter@gmail.com. And in the comment section, put slap the yank. If you disagree with something I say and you want to come on one of my live chats and tell me how stupid I am. I love to have people on. Be one of the brave ones that actually shows up. Go ahead and slap the yank. With that being said, you can also send in your viewer EDC pictures the same way to shootingleftofcenter@gmail.com. Just put viewer EDC in the subject line instead. And now that I've said all that, I just want to remind everyone that this channel is 100% viewer funded. So if you want to be a funder of this channel, you want to be a posse member, go over to patreon.com/the Yankee Marshal, become a supporter of the channel. And with that said, I'll sign off as usually by saying, as far as the state of the world today is concerned, well, you know, it is what it is. But if we all fight smart, keep our wits about us, ignore the fearmongers and the profiteers and the manipulators, and do the right things, in the future, what things will be, especially for us in the Second Amendment community, what things will be in the future is better.